Alright, yeah, it sits on the lining up, you get that fresh air. I love it, that's why it's
Well, I think we go directly to distributors, so when we're talking to forestry,
testing from
your first 15.
it's pretty cool. All right, folks. I think we'll get things underway because we've got a bit to get through today. Welcome to the Quarterly Information Seminar. There's been a lot happening in the last 3 months, so a bit to update everyone on. I'm going to be running through, I guess, 4 main things. Well, 2 of them are kind of interrelated. One's, I guess, the key lessons with the planning and design code after 4.5 months. I think we are now in from phase 3, and that will lead me into, I guess, what's pretty important time is on consultation, or not really consultation, they're calling for voice about particular, mainly procedural issues. They're calling it a miscellaneous code amendment. So I guess the purpose of that is not rezoning and things like that, but obviously there's quite a few issues with the code itself from the procedural aspect, and I've got a long list of things and would welcome any further comments from people that have had the interface with the code and particular bugbears, and we'll put those on the list as well. So I know, George, you'll probably have a bit to say on that. And yeah, then after that, I'll be giving a little bit of an overview of some of the key things to look out for in the 2022 public comment draft, which just closed recently on the NCC. Completely different format, it's very foreign when you look at it compared to older versions of the VCA. So it's just a bit to get used to, but they've in the whole process, there's actually been quite a bit of change to various policy as well. So I guess some of that would be kind of hidden in there when you're distracted by the fact that the thing looks so different. So anyway, and then I'll head into the EPA site contamination framework. Just a little bit of more of a heads up than anything, and some pretty poorly put together policy in relation to that. And Esther and I are working with the powers that be in various parts of government on that at the moment. But it's a bit of a dog's breakfast. So anyway, moving right along. So I'll get the slideshow underway. Which one is it? All right, so these are all of our speakers. So obviously my section is broken up into 4 sections, but then after that we've got Esther with the policy and advocacy update, Martha with the CBUS, and actually before Esther, we're going to slot mobile fuels in there. Loriana to speak to you about some of the benefits there, and Luke from Bianco is we're talking about in-cell structural walling. So if you're short on timber, which I'm sure some of you might be, it's worth listening in on that. And then we've got Denise from the industry advocate. All right, I will move along. Okay, so just a bit of a refresher. So the categories of development, you've got the exempt, no approval required, accepted is essentially your building consent only stuff. And then you've got your code assessed, which is broken up into deemed satisfied, performance assessed. And your deemed satisfied is what I guess you want to be aiming for, because your accredited professionals can sign off those, and you're accepted similarly. I won't worry about talking much about the other stuff. And that just is a bit of a time frame and a snapshot of how those work. So DTS is your 5 business days turnaround and guaranteed approval, and then when you get into the performance assess, it's 20 or more. Really depends on whether there's a notification or referrals and a CAP decision. So some of it's not quite the format that I had put together, but that's all right. I just wanted to highlight a couple of issues that, and this is, I guess, leading into our comments on the thing that's on consultation at the moment. Some of the unforeseen policy implications with what ended up being a very rushed together version of the code in those last sort of 3 months before it was released are that any structure on a boundary over 11.5 metres in length is now a notification trigger. Now, when you think of a structure, the normal course of thought is, okay, it's boundary wall or something like that. But then you go into sites that have a little bit of fall, retaining walls and fences cumulatively over 2.1 metres above ground level are structures. So pushed a lot of development suddenly, not intentionally, but as a result of poor policy, into requiring not only an assessment pathway that really wasn't envisaged, i.e. performance assessment, but pushing it down this notification pathway. So that's, are aware of that issue, so I expect that will be one of the things that will be changed in the miscellaneous amendment. But that's just for your information. A few things that are not lining up very well here. What's happened to this thing? Anyway, those marks are supposed to be where the walls are on boundaries. So again, poor policy, not really thought of. When you have road and terrace type dwellings, invariably you usually have a wall on a boundary for a lot longer than 11.5 metres that may not necessarily abut a simultaneously constructed wall on the internal boundary on the other side. So that one on the northern side there, as an example. That's just one of those examples where you go, okay, clearly that wasn't intended to be notified, nor was that intended to be tripped up by the policy as an issue, but they haven't, they've thought about the gaps to external boundaries, but they haven't really thought about, okay, what happens internally. That would actually trigger notification because of that internal boundary. It has no effect on neighbouring sites, but nonetheless. The other thing to be watched out for is this 900 gap to a dwelling wall on the external boundaries. Now, you can have an open-sided carport built to the boundary, but not the dwelling wall, and the dwelling wall, because it's the garage, it's integral to the dwelling. So that's just some of those things. Yeah, that's that point again. That one's lined up better, so yeah. Move along. Land divisions. Now, most of the time, you're going to be in a performance assessed category here, but you do have options for deemed to satisfy if you've got a pre-existing consent. So that could be an issue under the PDI Act or under the Form of Development Act. However, this overlay issue, which inadvertently has kicked a lot of those out. So council or whoever the relevant authority was at the time of making the decision on dwellings, they've already turned their mind to the division of the land associated with that and essentially made a quasi-decision on that. But now you lodge your land division, you got 20 days for performance test, plus your extra 20 for land division consent and SCAT referral and everything. And these overlays are pushing it into that path simply because of the policy that hasn't really been thought of. So the key overlays that kick all land divisions out of the DTS, the hazards, bushfire, all types of bushfire it is, hazards, flooding, heritage adjacency, and traffic generating development overlay. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So yeah, there's that DPF, DTS criteria. So it's going to satisfy a boundaries of existing consent, or is combined with a DTS application for dwellings. Personally, wouldn't combine them because there's no benefit to that. It'll only slow down your decision on the dwellings. Or you've got this in the general neighbourhood zone, satisfies C, which is all of those criteria, no more than 5 additional allotments, each has minimum side area of 300 and frontage of 9 metres. The lesson from that is you can't create road or terrace type allotments or allotments for that type of built form without the consent already in place or being combined with DTS dwellings for that type of development. You also have to declare your intentions with access. So you'll see under point 6 there, you've got DTS DPF 23.3.4 and point 6 in design and urban areas. Now that is really, I'll talk about that in a sec, but yeah, here we go. Well, it's a bit blurry. Yeah, so that's really, essentially when you're lodging a land division now, you have to show pretty much all your verge features and your setbacks of any access and the width of any access point in relation to those. to qualify for DTS, or it's actually kind of requisite for the documentation side of things anyway under Schedule 8. So but that one might hold you up otherwise. And there's this thing called a tangent point of an intersection of two or more roads. There's been some confusion as to what a tangent point actually is. So, yeah, before I go on to tangent points, I'll just highlight one particular issue. So site areas for road dwellings are expressed as minimums. So that's like your 250 minimum, but if you do have a site where you're putting 3 or 4 on it, and you want to do that type of development, you can average the frontages. So you can have narrower, like say 6 metre frontage, if you balance that with 8 metre frontages elsewhere, for example. So often your middle site is narrower. So here we go, that's just a bit of a demonstration of being mindful of your access provisions and any street trees. So there is generally you need a 2 metre setback for a street tree, but if the council's already consented to a lower setback, you can still have a dig to satisfy halfway potentially. But I've called this slide overly overlaid because if I could sum up the planning and design code in one phrase, that would be that. There are so many policies that are embedded in very confusing overlays that often apply and have no relevance to the form of development that you're actually seeking to do. I'll talk a little bit about traffic generating development before. That overlay actually ousts land divisions from a deep satisfied pathway, and it applies to any site within 250 metres of a state maintained road. So I'll show you just how broadly applied that is in a sec with the mapping. But before that, I'll talk about some of these other ones. So again, the hazards bushfire overlays, you think about some of the, now it makes sense for high and maybe even medium risk areas for there to be some control on what might otherwise slip through the net. But they've done this broad brush thing where your general risk, outback and urban interface, which could easily be met with, they have policies that could be met and assign a DTS pathway, but they've put essentially all forms of development where those are covered into this, it can't be deemed to satisfy, like there's no procedural way of that occurring. So really unnecessary delays with, particularly in regional areas, you'll see things in, so the middle of country townships that are covered by general bushfire roadway. Could be a dwelling addition at the back, no impact on any fire-related issue. There's a reticulated water supply in the township, yet the general overlay kicks it out of DTS. So just silly things like that. And I guess those are the things we're going to be focused on for that miscellaneous code amendment, which closes next Friday. So really, if you've got any bugbears, let me know about them, because I'll be putting a long list together to throw at government. I think they're all ears. They're always all ears, aren't they, George?
Well, while you're at it, you might as well tell them to take away the need for councils to issue development approval for a swimming pool fence.
Yeah, we'll put that on the list. And I'll just highlight hazards flooding, because this one's a real bugbear of mine, because you look at some areas there in the foothills, and I was thinking, I looked at a site recently, it's Seaton Downs, Seaton Heights, and if those areas are underwater, we're in a lot of trouble. But they're covered by a hazards flooding overlay simply because it wasn't mapped before the code came in. So they've just applied a lot of broad brush, and it kicks all these forms of development like dwelling additions and small sheds and verandas and all that out of DTS because of that overlay. So crazy stuff. Anyway, I'll go back to that traffic generating overlay. Yeah. So that sort of shows you how broadly applied it is. So 250 metres, this is kind of down towards my way, Door Park, Edwardstown area. Look at that across Adelaide, like, it's probably almost 30% of the area is covered by that overlay. And essentially the reason for that overlay is to capture things that are truly traffic generating developments. So you're talking land divisions of creating 50 or more lots, commercial development with GLA of 10,000 square metres or more, retail developments with 2,000 square metres or more, where major warehouse, distribution facilities, education facilities. Okay, fair enough, but a little 1 into 2 land division is kicked out of a DTS pathway because of this overlay, which has nothing to do with that form of development. Just one of the many issues. So anyway, I'm probably running short of time, so I'm going to blast through the next section. Tangent points, here's just the corner cut-off. You'll find this in your transport access and parking general policy modules. So any fencing within 4.5 metres of the intersecting boundaries, if you've got a corner site, suddenly is needing approval over that 1 metre height. That is not a tangent point, by the way. This is tangent points. That's straight out of, they've taken the definition out of AS 2890.1, which is the off-street parking. The councils are incorrectly applying this. I'm aware of, well, Brian, I think you filled me in on the issue you guys had recently with this, and our very own Marissa had this issue with Port Adelaide Edgewood recently. The tangent point is actually where the curve starts curving around the corner. It's nothing to do with the actual boundaries of the allotment. So, unfortunately, the diagram in AS 2890.1 is quite confusing because those two things kind of line up, but I've drawn it in a slightly different way here, so you can see it's clearly nothing to do with the boundaries of the allotment. So just be mindful, if councils are saying, no, you can't have your access because you're 4 metres from that point on the corner of your allotment boundary, tell them to get stuffed and read what that tangent point actually is. It's been recorded, by the way, so. So no other things to consider when you're preparing a DA. This is for planning consent purposes, obviously. And your documentation right before any application is lodged. So Schedule 8 is very, very onerous now. There's a lot more in it than what was in the old Schedule 5 of the development regulations. Think beyond the site, so you really got to look at the merge and look at your neighbouring properties and make sure you're telling your surveyor to pick those features up. Some of them need to be bashed around a bit to get them to do that. So, and lodge and land use applications before your land division, despite what the case law previously said, you'll be rewarded with quicker approvals and a potential DTS land division pathway. So that's that. Taking my planning hat off on now and putting building hat on. So I don't really have too many slides on this stuff, but I don't know how many of you had a bit of a chance to look through the NCC 2022 public comment draft, which closed, but actually closed on the 13th of July, tell a lie there. It was extended by a week. I think that was a COVID thing. So very different looking beast now, new format, numbering system, expanded governing requirements, and taking they've got these things called housing provisions that sit kind of alongside Volume 2 but outside it now, so a little bit confusing that is. And then there's a livable housing section. Now livable housing, I really hate that term, but that's what they've coined it. It's essentially supposed to be adaptable housing for if you acquire an injury or become mobility impaired or something along those lines. And it applies to not only Class 1 buildings, but also your solo units in class 2. So, another thing to be aware of is major shift in performance requirements for fire protection. So there's tables under A8 that determine performance. I won't go too much into that, it's very confusing, but that's kind of just for your information. Some new requirements for waterproofing membranes in relation to structural substrates. So they're telling us now that it must be applied directly on the structural substrate rather than on top of the screen. That could cause a few issues. Volume 1, they are talking about grades of structural substrate being required to achieve the necessary falls. So you can't rely on your screed to achieve those falls. Clearly they've thought purely in concrete terms and haven't considered the growth in CLT buildings in that space and other forms of construction, nor have they thought about the inherent difficulties in achieving those grades in the actual structural substrate and what kind of compliance issues they might be creating. So I think there'll be more to come on that. There's also some very confusing glazing performance requirements, which is taken out of I think it's section of the Annexure 3 of AS 1428.1. What they've done is pull bits of a section of that standard, but haven't portrayed the full picture as to. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. But first, we'll look at. I don't know if you might recall the last quarterly info. I gave you a bit of a rundown on the livable housing aspect, and essentially the silver standard of the livable housing design guidelines has more or less been adopted in this version of the NCC. So you've got the 6 parts which deal with access, entrance, internal doors and corridors, toilet, shower, and reinforcement of bathroom and toilet walls. So this is just a snapshot of that slide from the last quarterly, and that just shows you where that all fits. So the main issues we see are the threshold depth. So the LHD standard being a maximum of 56 mil, and then your general water protection requirements being a minimum of 50 mil. It leaves you 6 mil tolerance. Not really much room for error there. That's been identified as a major potential conflict and compliance point. Minimum clear doorway being 820, so essentially that's requiring it's 870 as your standard size door now if you're meeting these guidelines. And then your bathroom design for smaller apartments, dwellings. And I'll just show you some work that architects has done over the eastern states to demonstrate the issue with this. So that's straight out of section 4, so the minimum of 1 toilet at the ground or entry level of your class 1 or class 2 solo unit. So there's those clearance requirements and needing that toilet positioned in a corner so you can have grab rails on a wall. So that's really compromising some of the standard type bathroom designs now, the more galley style bathrooms.
Sorry, Andrew, just go back on the left.
Right.
The right on the left there. Why can't we have less than 1200 as long as you've got removal of hinges? Has that been taken out?
That's a good question. So this is from the livable housing design standard, and essentially this has been put into the NCC, but it'll be up to the state jurisdictions as to whether they opt out. I know New South Wales has already put on the table that they are opting out of that, so that gives us some confidence that we could probably push our building minister to opt out of this as well. I don't think Northern Territory is a fan of this either, and Queensland certainly isn't. So you might end up with this livable housing design standard floating in the NCC, and no states actually take it up, which would be quite amusing, but anyway. Now this is just a bit of a demonstration as to the bathroom considerations for a small apartment type scenario, what this actually does. So those ones on the left, you might see typical sort of inner city apartments, for example. Suddenly with this 1200 requirement, you're significantly increasing the size of the bathroom to accommodate that. So that's, and just to put that into the context of an overall apartment design, so this is like a 60 odd square metre apartment. Again, this shows you what's required in keeping the floor area overall the same. They're actually compromising the bedroom dimensions down to 2.4 from the 3 metre plus built-in road there. So they're calling this livable housing, but it actually compromises the livability of that in that scenario of the actual bedroom. It's just not a functional size. So that's just a clear demonstration of the problems with it. Very much glossing over things today because I'm mindful of the time frame that I've got. I'll just go through, and this is again to say very much for your information and we're working on this. The EPA site contamination framework is another example of pretty poor government policy that hasn't really thought of a range of scenarios, and there's this thing called the land use sensitivity hierarchy now, and there's essentially 6 classes of the kind of written up policy to suit this lush, as they call it. And it really defines the forms of development in terms of how they're defined elsewhere in the PDI regs or in code itself, nor have they sought guidance from the National Environment Protection Measure definitions. So they've kind of made up these terms to suit this lush, and the implications of that are any movement of land use up that class, up that land use sensitivity hierarchy, suddenly triggers the requirement for a preliminary site investigation report from an environmental consultant. Now that, just to give you a bit of an idea of the cost of that, at the moment, I'm hearing around $9,000 for that particular report. Now you might be, say, on an old warehouse site and you want to build some commercial development, for example, just some bulky goods or whatever it might be. That would actually trigger that. So neither is a sensitive use, but the fact that you're going from up this hierarchy triggers that. But the EPA, they've managed to get this into the regulations, but they're not actually a referral agency on many things at all. They've really stripped back the number of referrals they're getting, and it's only if that PSI identifies potential for site contamination in which they're referred. So that's a very low percentage of DAs. In fact, I haven't had one single referral out of that under the new system as yet. So you're relying on council planners to interpret what can be quite complex environmental considerations. And not only that, there's no discretionary power embedded in the legislation to allow council to waive that requirement. It's just ridiculous. So we are working, Esther and myself, with the powers that be on that, and hoping to see some improvements soon. So we might have to go up the chain a bit. Very brief. Any questions?
Just Brett Fennell from Build Pilot Certified. Just point on livable housing is we've used livable housing for a long time because it's been in place, and not a mandatory document by any means, but I'll just sort of give you, your talk about was a bit of a pain in the bum, but the whole process is about living in place for you or me when we get older, rather than have to be shunted out in an aged care home. We can stay in that place, get a handrail fixed, and live in our house forever, and get care services to come and see us. So a lot of my clients are actually using it as an advantage, and not only going from minimum silver, which is proposed, but going to actual gold, and using that as part of their promotion to get a generation of people into housing who would otherwise go to old folks homes. So I think, there's obviously a space and different elements which need to be built in as far as the cost goes, but I really see it should be taken on board and encouraged, because that's probably the way of the future.
Yeah, I'll take your point there, Brett, and obviously Master Builders was pretty instrumental in the development of the Liberal Housing Design Guidelines at a national level back in 2009 to 11 when that document was produced. And with the intention of it, generally speaking, being an option to take on board those features. So yeah, and there is a place for it. It is just the way that they're looking at making it mandatory when perhaps, and I almost think that, well, is it something that can be dealt with through an overlay type system? Because, what would the point of having this type of housing way out in the sticks, a long way from services and transport and things, or up in foothills where you've got slopes of 1 in 4 over the length of an allotment, for example. So they're talking exemptions in terms of the access path through that, the actual NCC, but not exempting the rest of the things. So some of the things like minimum 1 metre wide hallways, perfectly, I think, reasonable. So our focus is probably on the bathroom element, like for the smaller type units, being very difficult to accommodate, and thinking on the narrower allotments as well. How do you actually accommodate this while maintaining the general livability of the rest of the house? So I certainly take the point that there's a place for it, and whether a mandatory approach is the right approach is the question. As you say, there's a few of our members that specialise in providing this type of housing product as well, generally middle ring to inner city type environments. So, Wayne?
Andrew Wayne Murphy, building certifier. I'll be 80 next month. I'm approaching this issue from the other point where we live in an existing house on acreage. We're in the process of considering widening bathroom doorways in an existing building. I think there's opportunities for buildings where people don't want to go to anywhere else when they reach that stage, where we want to leave our house in the box. And there is, I think, good opportunity for existing buildings to be upgraded to provide for better access. Like I say, by simple things like sliding doors and things like that, ramps, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And doing that could occur without any form of consent at all, unless you're changing key structural elements. So that's an entirely voluntary approach. But when you're kind of getting to that your first home buyer market, they work really hard to get their deposit, and suddenly the build cost could go up by $10,000 because of having to accommodate livable housing design features, and that kicks them out of that market. That's probably the issue that we see. with some of this. Not to say that there isn't space for this in some of those areas either, but it's just, do we want this to be mandated? Incentivised, 100%, like give people a bit of incentive to take these things on board, and maybe it's a tax-related thing, capital gains, and through your stamp duty and things like that. But anyway, I'm probably well over my 15, 20 minutes, so I'm going to move. You want to come up, Esther?
It goes after you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Sorry. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
There is actually a slide.
Thanks. Well, thank you, Andrew. I will try and make a little bit of time because Joe's nodding at me because I think we might be running a little bit behind time by about 15 minutes. For those who haven't met me, I'm Esther Van den Linden. I'm the, I've been saying new Director of Policy and Communications, but I'm not sure that I can use the new for much longer. I started here in March, so some people may not have come across me yet. Starting in March was an interesting time because that was the first thing that kind of came across my desk, and when I was finding out about affirmative industry, the first thing that was highlighted was the lack of timber. Now, I've been here almost 6 months now, so 5.5 months, and I must admit, when I first started, I think we hoped that by now we would have a better result or a better outcome. Around the time of March, we identified that on Kangaroo Island there is a significant amount of timber, and the timber needs to get off the island. Some of it is bushfire affected, and Kangaroo Island Plantation would like to get this timber off the island. So there was a fantastic opportunity for us in South Australia. All of the other states are also looking for timber, but we have the answer literally on our doorstep. So a significant part of our work over the last few months has been trying to work through a few of the issues and a few of the problems around the timber, because unfortunately it's not just a matter of putting our hands up and saying, can we have it, and it coming over here. So to give you a little bit of a history as to why we've got such a shortage, I'm sure a lot of you would know a lot of the issues, but it really is the perfect storm. In 2019 we had bushfires, which affected South Australia, obviously with Kangaroo Island, but also affected a lot of New South Wales and Victoria and a lot of their suppliers of timber and their timber mills as well. So what that means is there's greater pressure on the timber that we have here in South Australia for it to go elsewhere. We also had a certain percentage of our market which we imported from Europe and other places around the world. And with coronavirus last year, that has then put basically a stop on a lot of the imports coming in. It's been difficult just to even get ships into Australia because of the restrictions around people coming in and actually offloading the timber on the ports, let alone in Europe, because a lot of Europe went through massive lockdowns and shutdowns. They didn't even have workers to cut the timber, to mill the timber, to even bring it over here. So there was a lot of stopping points. Then the Australian government went, fantastic, let's stimulate the building and construction industry, which we're all really, really grateful for, and developed Home Builder. They weren't the only country that developed Home Builder. So there's an equivalent Home Builder in the UK, there's one in in America, and different countries throughout Europe. They've been amazingly successful around the world, but what this has done is actually put significant more pressure on the need for timber, not just in Australia, but for worldwide. So even if we could say, hey, let's import a bit more, it's been sapped up by the markets overseas as well. So there's been a whole kind of, as we said, a perfect storm as to why the timber shortage has happened. But we are in a situation here in South Australia where we have got a solution. So we've been talking to Kangaroo Island Plantation. Some of the issues about getting it off, I've said that there's a few issues. One of them is the cost of transport. So what we've done is we've actually approached the federal government to provide to Kangaroo Island Plantation or the timber mills a federal government subsidy which was given to the eastern states and their timber industry for transporting timber. So we're working through that at the moment, and we're fairly hopeful that we'll be getting a result there. So that's a couple of $1 million, which we're hoping that the federal government will kick in, and then the state government will match as well. So that will reduce some of the costs, because as you can imagine, the cost of barging timber off and the cost of even just using Sea-Link to get the timber off is very, very restrictive. What we've also done is, so one of the other pain points, I guess, with this timber, even though the timber is there, are the mills here in South Australia. The mills are already running at full capacity. So even if they could get the timber, it wouldn't be extra timber to the market. It wouldn't be in addition to what they're already doing. So what we've done is we've actually then had a look around at some of the mills that aren't producing structural timber and said, okay, what do we need to do to get you to be able to produce structural timber? What machinery do you need? What upgrades do you need? So we spoke to the state government and they have agreed to put some money on the table, $2 million to upgrade, or not necessarily just upgrade, that's what we were asking for, but $2 million is on the table to any timber mill who's got a solution and how they can bring additional timber to the market. Now, funnily enough, once the money was on the table, there were more people that kind of went, oh, actually, maybe we can put on an extra shift and use the money to do that. So it doesn't actually have to be, extra graders, dryers, whatever. The people who win the expression of interest need to come up with a solution as to how they can get timber to the market, preferably in the next 3 months, potentially 6, but we're really within the next 3 months in order to access that money and that grant. So the expressions of interest closed on the 14th of July, and we believe that there were 3 or 4 expressions of interest which the government is now assessing, and they've just gone out to get some further information, but they're looking promising as to those expressions of interest. We're hoping that once they've been granted and the money's been allocated, that we can work fairly quickly on this. So from my point of view, working with government always takes a really, really long time. And back in March, I'm like, okay, we've got a solution, this would be great, let's get it going. And it is a little bit of a shame that we're sitting here now in August and we still, haven't actually got the timber off the island as yet. There are some risks here, and this is what we're trying to push with the government. You may, if you listen to any radio station, I think over the last few months you would have heard Will. We've been pushing this a lot in the media because we've got a few risks here. We know that interstate, they've gone, hang on a second, South Australia's got timber, how do we get some of that? So we risk it going interstate. We risk the timber not being taken off in time and Kangaroo Island Plantation just walking away and saying, this isn't actually worth our time or our money taking the timber off, or we can just sell it overseas to a better market. Because the truth be known, they'll get more money for this if they sell it overseas. So the fact that at the moment they have kind of ring-fenced it and they are working with us is fantastic, and we're going to continue to work with them as well as we can. But there's going to be a point in time, they're a publicly listed company, where they're going to say, we can't do this anymore. So, for us, we actually continue pushing really, really hard. Hopefully we'll have a solution as far as the timber goes shortly. So that's where we're sitting at the moment with timber. Current reports of the markets really, and I'd love to hear from some people in the room as well. We're hearing that, not every builder is having a problem with timber or having a large problem with timber, but we are hearing that some builders are being told roof trusses are being pushed out to March, April next year before they can get them. That's what they're being told, which is a significant problem for an industry that runs on cash flow. We see this as a concern, and we're very, very concerned that this is going to lead to closure of businesses. So I'd be interested, and people can come and have a chat to me as well, to know what other people are hearing within the industry. And then we've got other supply issues. So it's not just the structural timber, as in the timber coming off Kangaroo Island. We're hearing issues around the LVL as well, and shortages around there, price increases and delays on steel as well. All of this has been brought about by the additional work around home builder. One of the doers I was talking to the other day had a great analogy. He said, I feel like we've swallowed a snake, a snake that's swallowed a goat. And so we've got this big glut up here at the moment, and a shortage of timber, and we're just going to be pushing this big goat down, and as we digest it, it's just going to still keep going down. So, the next shortage is going to be potentially bricklayers once the next load of, once we do get timber, and then it might be, gyprock or whatever. So I think that the delays, the suppliers are still going to have an issue going down the track, but for us, getting the timber onto these slabs and getting these houses started is key, because then the building process can at least start and be worked around. So the next major thing, I guess, that we've been dealing with in the last couple of weeks has been the lockdown which occurred. As you would know, building and construction industry in March, April last year and November last year were considered essential services, and were able to continue. We 100% believe that the building and construction industry can work safely during the shutdown. It's outdoors the majority of the work, and it's an industry that knows safety and lives and breathes safety. And so we were very concerned this time when the industry was asked to shut down for those 7 days. Our question to the government is, what's changed? What's different from November last year to now that makes us not essential services when we were previously? So we were very vocal. First of all, so generally with advocacy, what we do is we speak directly to government. We don't go to the media, we don't go public with things until we've actually had that conversation, which we did have. We didn't have a lot of luck. So then obviously we went public and said, we need to open, we want to be open, and we believe that we can safely open as well. Our concern was that the government then said, okay, we're going to open up some projects to start on the Monday, the lockdown started on Wednesday, start on the Monday, and they handpicked a number of commercial projects which they believed could open on the Monday. So really it gave an extra 2 days, and those handpicked ones were all government projects. They were generally schools, hospitals, which they considered essential services. Our concern was why those particular ones, because it wasn't all the school projects, it was only, hand-picked ones, and that they didn't necessarily think through the process. So they've said, okay, these 25 schools and these hospitals and these community centres can start work on these ones, but they didn't give any guidance. Well, does that mean that the businesses and manufacturers that are supplying those businesses, can they open? If they can open and they can work, how much work can they do? Are they only allowed to do the work that supplies that school? If you're a carpenter and you're a subcontractor working on there, are you allowed to do any other work as well? So over the 7th safely, we should be able to open. So we had some concerns around that, and obviously, worked and pushed very hard to say that, there hasn't really been, and if you look into state, there hasn't been any sort of transfer of COVID on construction sites. There have been people on construction sites with COVID, but what we think is a strong argument is they've gone to construction sites, they've been tested positive, yes, they've had COVID, but there's been no transmission. It's outdoors, it's safe, there's safety, there's masks. So we believe that it is a fairly safe situation. So that's obviously been a big push that we've been doing and been working on in the last few days as well. So some other areas that we've been working on, I might just jump straight to the environmental food protection areas, because as I said, I am very conscious about time. And I'm happy to have a chat to people afterwards as well. So the environmental food protection area, there's a review of submissions due today, which we are working on and just about to finalise. For those who aren't familiar, basically, if you look at the map of Adelaide, bringing around Adelaide are areas which they consider food protection areas, so they're areas which supply and grow food for our population. You're thinking, as you're heading out north, some of the agricultural areas, and they're kind of semi-rural areas which produce food. Ironically, a lot of them don't actually produce food, but they fall within this area. So what it was is a review of the food production areas to see whether or not those should be changed. And as part of that review, there's a 3-step test, which included looking at the 15-year land supply. Our concern was that what they did is they looked at the 15-year land supply and said, yes, we've got enough land in Adelaide, we don't need to touch these fruit protection areas. And then they've asked for submissions for us to comment on whether there's any anomalies we want to deal with. Our question was, why weren't we able to put in a submission, why weren't we able to have discussions when they did the 15-year land review? Because that was the important bit. That's the bit where we should be feeding in information, where we should be feeding in valuable, information from our members and feedback as to whether or not there is a 15-year land supply. Part of the issue they also did is they based this 15-year land supply on data from 2010 to 2020. And what they've said is, yes, we've got enough land, there's a lot of infill happening and, a lot of block division, and there's going to be enough land based on that. What they didn't actually do was look at data which included coronavirus in 2021. So if you look at 2021, there's been a massive push through Home Builder, but also just in the way that people lead their lives, for wanting to have a little bit more space, wanting to have an office at home and working from home. And that's not going away. You see the vacancy rates in the CBD, and the number of people who have actually returned to office work is still quite low. So people are wanting to move from home. We're seeing a significant shift in the way that people do their work. So by having a review to say we've got enough land for the next 15 years, not consulting with the industry, and basing it on old data, we're saying that it's a flawed premise to even start with. So we'll be putting in to say, not necessarily that the whole process needs to start again, but what we're looking at is the reviews meant to happen every 5 years. We're saying that next week, luckily enough, is the census, so make sure everybody fills it out. So next week is the census, and that will give us really, really good data. And so we're saying that what we should be doing is doing another review shortly, once the data from the census comes out next year, to actually have a look to see how much of a shift there has been, because we think that will provide better information. So that's due today, and we are hoping to get a good response, because even though it says a 5-year review, there's nothing stopping them from doing it sooner than 5 years. And we believe that the whole process has been quite flawed in the way that they have approached it. So that's what we're dealing with at the moment with the food production areas. I think, have I gone through quickly enough, Joe? I'd like to hear if anyone's got any questions or thoughts or any feedback. If you'd like to feed anything into me, you can do so now, or or to catch up later. If anyone's got any questions.
If you have to give a guesstimate of when we are likely to be getting that KI timber milled and available for use.
I'm not betting my house on this, am I?
No. I asked for a guesstimate.
I would think if it's going to happen, and it will go ahead, it will be within the next 3 months. Because as soon as we get the okay, if we do get the okay, so if it does go ahead, if we do get the okay, the timber mills who put in the expression of interest have all said that there are processes they can put in place, equipment that they can buy that can start getting it on the market pretty quickly. They are currently taking it off the island, so every day they're taking timber off the island and it's going overseas. At the moment it's going to India, because there's just not the market here, and they're paying more for it. So it's only small amounts though, it's very, very small amounts. And they've just started actually taking some stuff up to Morgan Timber Mill as well, and they're processing some structured stuff there. But again, because of their equipment, they're not well enough equipped for it. They've got a manufacturer instead of mechanical one and stuff like that. It's a very, very small amounts, and they're actually doing it at a loss. So there is the need, there's the want. So if we can, hopefully very soon. But as I said, there are some risks that if we don't, that it's either going to go interstate or overseas, and that is a really real risk. But if we can get this expression of interest up and running, and we're pushing the government really, really hard, we recently got data through as recently as yesterday to show there's been a significant drop in the number of people employed in the construction industry in the last month. So if you look at South Australia overall, and you look at the trajectory of jobs growth, we've actually added on about another 5,000 jobs in South Australia over the last probably 12 months. We're one of the few states which has actually seen a significant increase in construction jobs. In the last month, we've seen a significant drop, about 3,500 jobs. Now, with the amount of work that's still in the industry, the pipeline from home builder, we should not be seeing those kind of drops. So the only thing that we can think that's causing that is the lack of timber. Because the work's there, so why is it being done? Why are we seeing a drop in the number of people employed in the industry? So we'll be taking those stats and those figures to the government and saying, this is critical. We're losing people in the industry now. So hopefully once they see those numbers, that'll get them moving a lot quicker as well. Yeah.
Can you confirm the rumour that the larger project home builders have an adequate supply of timber for wall framing and trusses, and that's the smaller to medium builders that are missing out?
We've certainly heard more from the smaller to medium builders that there is a shortage. I can't confirm the rumour because it's only a rumour to me as well. So I have certainly heard that rumour. Can't confirm it or deny it either way because I actually don't know. But as far as people who have come to us who have had concerns about getting timber, it has certainly been the smaller builders that have, and that's something that we've really been pushing, that when this timber comes off the island, and I'm saying when, not if, because I'm really positive about this. So when it comes off the island and when it gets to the distribution stage, we want that distribution stage to, first of all, be South Australian, but also small builders as well. We don't want it going to stockpiles. It needs to be accessed straight away to be able to save the industry, and that means getting it to small to medium builders, which actually make up a significant, volume of building in, even though they're not the volume builders, when you look at them as a portion of the market, it's a significant portion of the market. Okay, all right, pass on to Mark. Thanks. Is that all right?
Introduce.
Actually,
we want mobilise.
Oh, sorry, I'm moving.
Sorry,
Martha.
Sorry. That's up. Actually,
Leave it on me.
yeah, there's no slides for you, Loriana. Sorry about that. But yeah, come on, let's hear about some fuel.
Just to change the subject a little bit. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? My name's Loriana from Mobile Oil Australia, and I'm here with my colleagues Sarah and Carly. We're very happy to be here, and thank you to Master Builders for the opportunity to launch our fuel card offer for all MBA SA members. Before I get into our offer, I'd just like to give you a recent history on the Mobile brand in the Australian market and the feedback we've received about our fuel card program so far. Over the last 3 years, you no doubt have noticed the iconic Mobile brand is back. We currently have 50 Mobile card accepting sites in South Australia, the most in the country, and we're growing every month. Our talented team continue to produce the high quality fuel that Mobile is known and trusted for, but we now work with our branded wholesalers and resellers such as X-Convenience and Perry's, who understand their local market and are driven to build their own business while offering a competitive choice in the market. This model, in conjunction with Mobile sales team on the ground, has enabled us to build Mobile Card to meet the needs of small, medium and large businesses. The success of our Mobile Fuel Card program to date is because this smart business model has enabled Mobile and the businesses who operate Mobile branded sites to focus on what we all do best. And the biggest winner is you, the end user, who benefits most. During March 2020, we launched our new Mobile Fuel Card program. Yes, the start of COVID era proved to be a challenge, as it was and continues to be for many businesses. But through these challenging times, the investment has continued and brand new Mobile branded service stations continue to be built every month in SA. And suddenly there was a new kid on the block. The past 2 years we've been on the ground engaging with small, large business owners from builders, plumbers, civil, corporate, right through the truck transport industry. and the general public. And the overwhelming feedback on our fuel card program and mobile science has been extremely positive and very well received in the SA market. People are genuinely pleased and have commented on competitive pump price, presentation of mobile branded service stations, our growing network coverage, the easy online mobile application, and the customer service they receive from our sales team, and first-hand experience in reduced fuel consumption in their vehicles. The most common feedback is the strong support for local South Australian mobile branded wholesalers, Expo Convenience and Perry's, and how they have added a broader choice of fuel provider for the South Australian market. Today we are thrilled to launch our Mobile and Master Builders SA Fuel Card offer to members. Our offer is detailed in the folders that you have with you, but I'd just like to highlight some of the benefits for you now. As an MBA member, you will enjoy 0 card fees, so it will cost you nothing to have a mobile fuel card. This is quite unique in the market today. An 8 rate ongoing group discount off pump price, and a special rate if you sign up before the 31st of December this year. Easy account management, itemised statement, no need to keep receipts or ATO approved reporting, and custom card controls tailored to your individual business needs. Mobile card online, 24/7 portal that enables customers to manage their account when it suits them. A network that is growing rapidly in South Australia and across the country. Easy online application with custom promo code for MBA, with a sales and customer service support team that can assist you over the phone, in person, and with all after sales care. And of course, mobile synergy fuels, advertised across all grades, enabling better fuel consumption and protecting your engine for the longevity of your vehicle. While our customer service team based in Melbourne is first point of support, we also have a dedicated local sales team here in SA to provide the best customer service experience and account management. Mobile value the relationships that we have with our customers and understand the importance of having that direct point of contact for when and if you need it. So the details, the full details of the offer are in the folders, and if you haven't already, please help yourself to the merchandise just outside the door. The hats are fantastic. No Velcro at the back, they're actually really good quality. Sarah, Carly and I will be here to answer any questions that you might have afterwards. Thank you to Master Builders Association. We're looking forward to this relationship and working with you and your members. And finally, thank you for listening and welcome to MBA and Mobile Fuel Card offer. We look forward to servicing all your fuel needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Loriana. That's a real value add for members, I think. I'll be signing up myself for that. So, all right. All right, next we've got Martha from CMUS, no stranger to us. Welcome back.
Thank you. Now, I'm also conscious of time because I think we're half an hour behind. So I will go through as much of this as I can. Some of it diluted, so we can try and catch up on time. But if you want to have a chat about anything or you want further information, please reach out and I can answer those questions. But firstly and foremostly, importantly, this information doesn't take into account your specific needs and circumstances, or your financial position and objectives. So please read a relevant product disclosure statement before making a final decision. I will be talking about performance, so please be aware that past performance is not a true or a reliable indicator of future performance. We're going through here. So all of the information that I've provided you on these slides are as of the date 30th of June last year. This slide in particular. So as of last year, 30th of June, you can see here that our average returns were 8.98. So Firstly, CBUS has a proud history of being one of the first industry super funds in Australia. We were formed in 1984, and since that time, we've grown to be one of the leading industry super funds for building, construction, and all the allied industries. And as one of the larger industry super funds, as of that date, we managed $54 billion of our members' funds. Most recently, as at the 30th of June this year, that number has actually grown to $65 billion. So over the last 12 months, we've grown by $10 billion. Our members are still around the 775,000 members that we have, and we work very closely with 157,000 employers across Australia, helping them manage their super obligations. As an industry super fund, all profits go to members and not shareholders. So that's a really important differentiator between us and retail funds. So we're proud to announce that last financial year, ending the 30th of June 2021, our growth option, which is the My Super option, returned its largest ever annual return in our 37-year history of 19.34%. This return built on from the previous financial year's return of 0.75%. We were one of the few super funds that actually posted a positive return back then, as everyone was trying to navigate the effects and complexities of COVID. So really strong performance for 2 years, which is fantastic for our members. The global pandemic has had the biggest and has been the biggest single driver of market fluctuations over the last 18 months. However, despite the challenges, our resilience and collegiate investment approach at CBUS has really enabled us to deliver strong outcomes for our members. And like I mentioned, in the last 12 months, our assets have also grown by $10 billion. The investments team, our investment team, has a total portfolio approach and active management of our investments, both internally and externally. And this has allowed them to take advantage of opportunities quickly as they've come up. Our decision to continue to invest in Australia and businesses early on in the COVID crisis really paid off for us. And in addition, we were able to support more than 279,000 applications for our members, totaling $2.3 billion in early access payments for their super due to the financial hardships caused as a result of the pandemic. We're really, really pleased to announce that CBUS again is top performing fund or top quartile performing fund with our growth fund for a second year in a row. This means that staying the course with your CBUS balance, you would have benefited from the investment returns that are top quartile in the industry. So this is really great news, but it really showcases the importance of remaining invested over the long term and not taking short-term views on your super. And that's really reflected in our 5, 10 and 15-year results. So this is just some of our other investment options. I know we focus all of our adverts is on our growth My Super option, and that's because the majority of our membership actually sits in there. But we do have 4 other investment options, ranging from cash through to high growth, and they've also had some fantastic returns last year, and you can see that as well with the 5 and 10-year returns. We are actually looking to add some more investment options to this in the coming months, so those investment choices will actually increase. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, so we're not just a super fund, and CBUS Property is a wholly owned subsidiary of CBUS, and it really has the responsibility for the development and management of CBUS's direct property investments. Importantly, we create jobs for the industry, so we anticipate since inception, we've created around 100,000 jobs for the industry, for our employers through our property developments. We've got some fantastic returns for Cbus property, 15.25 since inception, and last financial year 6.99%. There is a misconception that in our property allocation, which is included in our high growth, conservative and conservative options, that you just have Cbus property exposure. You actually have around 50% exposure in that particular asset class. And it is very well diversified along with other listed property trusts and pooled investment trusts. So you're not just invested in Cbus property in that allocation. You do have a lot of diversification, but currently $3.2 billion sits within our portfolios with Cbus property. In saying that, we actually have around $5.9 billion in total investments, direct property assets right throughout Australia. So we're a significant player, a significant property developer and investor in Australia. 186 assets around the country. 4 of those assets are in South Australia. The most recent one is being built at the moment, which is 83 Pirie Street. That's actually the facade, so that's what it's going to look like when it's completed. And that's going to, our major tenant in there is Dicty, which is fantastic. We just don't invest in property, so we also invest in infrastructure. $5.7 billion around the country in those types of assets. Adelaide Airport is an example of one in South Australia, and that's actually not managed by Cbus, that's actually managed by IFM investors, which sits as part of your portfolio. So roughly around $12 billion in assets, Cbus property managed. Time here. So this is our current product suite. And why I wanted to show you this today is that we really cater for all of our members at Cbus. Our recent inclusion into this product suite is the corporate super product. So across that, we do have 4 different super type of products that our members can use. And really the difference in those is the insurance offer, or how we apply those insurance offers. The latest one, the corporate super offer, that really allows our employers to design an insurance, or we've got one of 3 designs of insurance, and our employers can select which one, or a multiple of those that will benefit their employees. So that's our latest one. Our sole trader account, that's really for our sole traders. It provides all of our sole traders with default death, total and permanent disability, and importantly, income protection as default. I just want to also call out that in our industry super fund, we currently provide death and disability cover as default, and we don't have a blue collar income protection offer in there. We are going to release that in the next couple of months. That won't be as default. You'll need to apply for it if you're interested in taking it out, but it does provide our blue collar or manual members the opportunity to protect their income over either a 2 or 5 year benefit period with selected waiting periods at an affordable price. So if you were to go out to market and you're a tiler or something like that, it's very difficult to get insurance, and if you do get it, it's extremely expensive. So this is an affordable way to get coverage and to cover your income if something should happen. Competitive fees. So again, we'll skim through this quite quickly. I've just compared this. So Super Ratings is an independent company that collects data from all super funds, and it allows us to compare It allows us to compare fees and it allows us to compare returns. So compared to the market, to the average public offer fund, we are very competitive as far as fees go. $2 a week, 0.19% of your account balance, and that's capped at $1,000 a year. And then you've got your investment fees, depending on which portfolio you're in, and that comes off a gross return, so you get the net crediting rate. So very, very affordable, great returns, and insurance that's specifically designed for the industry. All right, we'll just focus on a couple of the federal budget changes. Compulsory super guarantee, that was a big one. That took effect on the 1st of July this year. Australian workers receive a boost in compulsory super now that employers need to contribute on your behalf. That rate went up, like I said, to 10%, and it will, or it is expected to progressively increase to 12%. So we'll wait and see what happens in the next budget, but we are anticipating that to go up in 2022-23 to 10.5 and so on. As employers, for the employers in this room, you need to ensure that compulsory super is paid on every dollar of your employee's ordinary income earnings, and that includes things like commissions, shift loadings, allowances, but isn't paid on overtime. So that's one of the changes. And we really supported this. So CBUS really supported this increase, just because, or one of the reasons being that last year through COVID, 200,000 of our members actually had to take money out of their super through that early release scheme because of the COVID issues. Some of the other increases have been the thresholds that you can contribute to. So concessional before tax contribution caps, this includes your super guarantee contributions and salary sacrifice, were 25,000. They have increased according to the changes in the WADI, which is your average weekly ordinary time earnings. It's gone up to 27,500, so an increase of 2,500. And that's also been the case with your after-tax contribution cap. You had $100,000, that's gone up 4 times to be the same as the before-tax contribution cap. So 4 times 2,500, which takes you up now to 110,000. Bring forward rules. I have put this in here. If you qualify, qualification is age and total super balance. So if you qualify, you can look at your after-tax contributions and bring them forward for 3 years. Your total super balance plays a part in that. And when we're talking about total super balance, it's the balance of all of your super funds and all of your retirement products. They play a big role in whether you can contribute after tax and how much you can contribute after tax. So if you bring forward rule, if your current total super balance as of 30th of June last financial year is under $1.48 million, you can bring forward 330,000. If your account balance is above that and below $1.59 million, you can bring forward 220,000. And if your account balance is above the 1.59 but below 1.7, you can contribute 110,000. You can't contribute after-tax contributions at all if your account balance is above the 1.7 million. Now people say to me, Martha, how do I get my total super balance? Everyone hopefully has MyGov by now, because it's been around for a while. That is your source of truth. So you go to MyGov, go to your tax application, go to the super tab, the information, and it actually records what your total super balance is, what you've contributed before tax contributions for the last 5 years. So, have a look at that, because if you contribute above your caps, there are tax implications. Okay? If you need any assistance with MyGov or where to look for it, please just pick up the phone, give me a call, and I'll show you how to do it. And you've got all the information at your fingertips. That's a little bit about that. Okay, so this was a big one. Now this is still at proposed stage. So previously, if you had an employee earning, sorry, there we go. I was bound to do this. If you have an employee earning less than $450 a month, you weren't obligated to make any super guarantee payments. As of, assuming that is passed through Parliament, the expected start date is going to be 1 July 2022. And that just basically means that Australian workers will no longer need to earn more than over $450 a month to qualify for compulsory super contributions from their employer. Instead, employers will then be required to pay compulsory super on every dollar of an employee's normal wage, which is that ordinary times earnings that I was talking about previously. So CBOS has been advocating for the removal of this threshold for years, recognising the significant disadvantages workers have that have multiple jobs or part-time casual jobs. So it really does affect them. And almost 2 out of 3 workers earning less than $450 a month are women. So this change could deliver super to around 200,000 extra working women, which is fantastic. First Home Super Saver Scheme. I'm going to talk a little bit about this, although probably in this room it doesn't look like we would have anyone that would qualify, but it is good if you've got someone that you know of in your business or personally. So the First Home Saver Super Scheme is an attempt to help more first home buyers get into the property market. Initially, with this particular scheme, you could withdraw $30,000 from your super. This is money that you voluntarily contributed, and it doesn't include your employer's super guarantee. So if you contributed before tax or after tax contributions, you are able to withdraw up to $30,000 to go towards your first property. They've extended that out. So from 1 July 2022, the maximum amount you can withdraw will be $50,000. So that's absolutely fantastic. When you withdraw your super savings, or when people withdraw super from your before tax contribution earnings, that needs to be declared on your tax return, and you are taxed on that, but any after tax contributions aren't. So there's a little bit around with that, but understanding that moving forward, you can contribute to your super, as long as you haven't purchased a home before, contribute to your super either before or after tax. When you find a property, you can pull that money out and use that for your deposit, up to a maximum of 50. And this is just something extra that I've put in here that really isn't relatable to superannuation, but I thought it could be interesting here. So incentives to hire, the budget proposed an extra $2.7 billion to extend wage subsidies of new apprentices and trainees. The program will pay businesses 50% wage subsidy over 12 months for new apprentices or trainees signed up between the 5th of October and the 31st of March 2022. And this support is capped at $7 per quarter, per apprentice or per trainee. So that's a great incentive. And also the government had further proposed that $16 billion in tax cuts would go to small and medium businesses by 2023 and 24. Effectively, this will reduce the tax rate for small to medium companies to 25% from, and I think that's actually come into play, hasn't it, from 1 July this year. And lastly, not too good tonight. So lastly, extending our small business loan scheme. The small medium enterprise recovery loan scheme is set to continue under the government's proposal. This helps lenders provide cheaper loans of up to 5 million for terms up to 10 years with interest rates capped at 7.5%, and the option of a 24-month repayment holiday, which is fantastic. The scheme is available to small to medium enterprise with a turnover up to 250 million that were recipients of the JobKeeper payment between the 4th of January 2021 and the 28th of March 2021, or that were affected by floods in eligible local government areas in March 2021. And then we've also got the instant tax write-off has also been extended to 2023. So the proposed 12-month extension really provides eligible businesses more time to use those incentives and encourages business to bring forward any spending on new assets. So that's really it from me, unless anyone's got any questions. Yeah. Thank you all.
I'll be going with that on the screen. Right. Thanks, Martha. All right, now we've got guys from the ACOs, Luke and a few of his co-conspirators to speak about Dincel structural walling. So if you're short on timber supply at the moment, this might be something that could offer an alternative solution. Yeah, that's the one.
Cheers. Thank you, Andrew. So hello everyone, my name's Luke. I'm from Bianco Construction and Industrial Supplies. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about Bianco Construction and Industrial Supplies. We've been on the market for a very long time. Local SA supplier, and we try to service the market as much as we can, both in timber, structural steel, general hardware, machinery, clothing. We do a lot of work with the master builders, apprentice kits and everything like that. And one of our ways of servicing the construction industry is that we're constantly looking for new products to evolve with the industry and help you guys out. One of these products that we become the sole distributors of in South Australia and Northern Territory is called Dincel Structural Walling. So what are Dincel Structural Walls? So as Esther touched on, and as you're all aware, we got a massive shortage of timber and steel and basically every material. Now we have solutions such as the Kangaroo Island project and everything like that, but we also have a solution in terms of products we can use. This solution here comes from New South Wales. It's Australian owned, engineered, manufactured and designed. It's a permanent polymer formworking system for concrete walling. It's a modular system which links together to make up the shape of the wall and used with ready-mix concrete poured into Dincel. It does not need to be stripped, so it's a lost formwork. Lightweight, simple and fast. It's been on the market for 16 years, so it's checked off all of the compliances, and the skin protects concrete and reinforcement from water and degradation. So there's plenty stock within Australia. As I said, it's manufactured in New South Wales. So plenty of it. Its main benefits. Sorry, I'll just. That's bad. So it's Australian invented and manufactured, launched in 2006, designed by professional engineers. This engineering group was called Dincel and Associates, and they found a similar product in Canada and thought we can improve the industry and we can improve this product and release this. The plant is in New South Wales, capacity of 1.5 million square metres per year, and future plants in pipeline for other states. Now the Dinsel profile comes in 4 different sets. You have the 110 width, the 155 width, the 200 and the 275. What this means is that it can fit all manner of structural and load-bearing walls and retaining walls and all such. There's also a whole bunch of accessories, including 90-degree corner pieces, as seen here. So your 90-degree corners are all done, curved pieces and all such. Now they come in lengths anywhere from 1.8 to 7.95 meters. So if you wanted to do a retaining wall up to 8 meters, you can. Now the main benefit about Dinsel is that those clips that clip together the Dinsel wall are completely waterproof. What this means is that if you're building underground, without a water table and any retaining walls or cellars, you don't need to do any tanking or waterproofing to the back. Curved walls of any height or length without joints. There's just a job example. So it's very good use for water tanks underground, retaining walls, cellars, basements. So we can actually look at moving underground, as Sydney and Victoria are doing a lot of now. Also, it's compliant with NCC, so tested by the CSIRO and Warrington Fire. Its smoke growth rate is 7 times under the NCC limit. And the Dinsel skin, it doesn't catch fire or melt, it actually chars, effectively stopping the spread of flame. So not only is it fireproof, but it's waterproof. So the Dinsel skin performs 180 times better than requirement for waterproof membrane. Not only that, but it's non-toxic. So no environmental damage done whatsoever. CSIRO tested for 6 meter head of water for 100 hours applied to that joint. No separate waterproofing membrane required or joint maintenance other than the wall to slab junction, which is just a cold joint between your footing and your Dinsel wall. We have a solution behind that, which is just your simple, say your licorice water salt that you put along the footing, and that swells up upon any contact with water. And then there's further procedures you can take from there, but that's usually sufficient. So quality concrete. So it's a non-hygroscopic material, meaning it does not suck in water and it does not release water. What this means is that you have a strong cure. Now the concrete requirement for Dinsel is 180 slab to 10 mil to 12 mil aggregate. This means that it's called high flow concrete, self-compacting. What that means is that it just gets through all of the profile, leaving no segregation or honeycombing. Here's an example of a 4.5 meter high single pour 200 mil stump Dinsel wall with a 275 profile. Now, the Dinsel wall has crack inducers in it, and the webbing acts as your reinforcement. So in some situations, in some builds, you can completely eliminate your rim or greatly reduce it. So not only are you replacing, say, timber studs with this wall, if you were deciding to do a house using the external walls, but you can even eliminate some of your steel if you're doing a retaining wall or anything such. Protective skin. So Dinsel skin protects the concrete and reinforcement within from water, vapor, and contaminants. It's tested against sulfuric acid, nitric acid, hydrochloric acid, phosphoric acid, petroleum, and diesel. Therefore suitable for use in seawater, acid sulfate soil, and contaminated soil. This really is a multi-purpose product, so it can be used in pools, retaining walls, seed walls, any way you think. Joints and crack control, seal eliminated, as touched on before. So controlled cracks at 125 millimeters remove the need for joints in the wall, compared to small cuts, which initiates weak planing and induces crack. Here's a job example in Sydney. So the basement walls of this project consist of 140 metre long walls. These walls were installed without the need of waterproof membranes, scaffolding, horizontal wall reinforcement, and joints in a very short space of time. Concrete curing. So the purpose of curing is to retain moisture within the concrete mix for the longest time possible. Encapsulation ensures ideal curing conditions for maximum cement hydration and concrete strength. Safe and environmentally friendly. So as we're moving forward in the world, obviously we're looking for better solutions and cleaner solutions for the building industry. This is one of them. So, old waste during manufacturing gets fed back into production. That means it's 100% recyclable and there's no waste during manufacturing. It's non-toxic, suitable for potable water applications such as water tanks and seawalls also, and positive green sub points with PVC construction due to durability. It's tested to have at least a 100-year life. Easy, fast, and flexible. So flexibility, no shock drawings required. Also, safe installation by snapping panels together allows even unskilled labour to assemble. It really is as simple as this. That's all it takes to install. Once that is done, you keep moving, and fast installation up to 25 metres squared of 2 men per hour. So the light panels are 3 metre length, weighs only 13 kilos, no WHS issues. That means that if a panel falls over, you're not going to crush anyone and you're not going to break your back with it. It's monolithic construction, so pour walls and slabs monolithically. No reliance on structural bracket connections or associated fire rating. Time and cost savings, the builder deals with one trade only and is responsible for both walls and slabs. So any trade with any on-site experience can install this product. There's no specialised tools needed. It's easily coupled with a grinder, circular saw, or synchro saw, meaning you won't need a specified tradesman to have all these tools. You can get the product on site and start selling. Vertical reinforcements. So Dinsel has a whole bunch of little accessories that can help with the build. This includes maybe the vertical rear clip that holds your vertical rear in place. This can be achieved with other methods if need be. Horizontal reinforcement, so that's just another little accessory if you need to put dual rear in. Otherwise, if you're putting any steel in, there's actually no steel tying required also, as all those holes line up with each other and the bars overlap. Now, Dinsel is constantly evolving. They're not a stagnant company. One example of this is that's the outdated corner profile. They have a new updated corner profile for certain situations that actually has removable flashing on the outside. What this means is that you can work your steel on the inside if need be. Put that flashing back on, you still have all your waterproofing capabilities and structural integrity. Now, if a customer doesn't like the finish of a product, it's not going to fly. That's why with Dinsel, one of the fantastic benefits of it is that you can clad it in any way you want, direct stick cladding. It looks fantastic painted, or you can even render it. The skin itself is actually food sanitary grade quality, so it's a clean surface. Here's just a job example using Dinsel that they clad at the outside. Rendered smooth or textured. So we got a texture code system that we partner with Acrolog, who we deal with. Cladding, so direct stick cladding. So all those sandstone retaining walls and garden boxes are all made out of Dinsel. Brick clad systems, raw versus painted. And here's an example for use as a party wall. One of the areas that benefits greatly for Dinsel using the party walls, obviously because they're structural integrity and also their fire rating. So internal finishes. So Dinsel is great for below ground. It's great for water situations. It's also great for housing. So one of the internal finishes that can be used is you can direct stick plasterboard directly to the Dinsel, or you can bat that out and fix survey services to run behind. There is actually a house in South Australia that's already built with Dinsel, and he simply nailed on the top plate on top of his structural walls, put the trusses on top, and all his external walls completely made out of Dinsel, and he built it himself. Applications. So being a maintenance-free, waterproof and airtight construction solution, the applications are virtually endless. Dinsel can be used in columns, blade and intimacy party walls, facade walls, lifts and stairwells, waterproof basements, retaining walls and sea walls, tanks for water, sewer, oil, grain and petrol, and culverts for roads, railways, drainage service sites. It really is a civil, multi-residential and residential product. It's an example of a basement wall, so no access to the exterior required. Obviously, as you have that waterproofing already covered. Just some test conditions, so this stimulates a 3 metre high, 275 profile tinsel with no concrete infill. So it is plastic, but it's pretty strong. What does this mean? That with a 275 profile, you can immediately backfill uncompacted. So conventional walls may require weeks to increase your build time. The tinsel wall connection to structural steel, it's applicable with Bondec also. Here's a 90 metre long tinsel retaining wall at 4.3 metres high. We done something similar in Findon for our customer Jovic Group. We built a 3.5 metre high wall that was taking a 4-storey building with an undercroft. So it was doing the retaining of the undercroft and also the structural load. A 6 metre high tinsel wall. And also, tinsel can be used as an edge board. So it's got an array of usefulness and applications. It can completely eliminate your edge forming up of a slab if you're doing a multi-story building. Window and door openings easily achieved. And tinsel vertical members for culverts. This is a cylindrical tank built by 2 men in under 30 minutes. Now, the product has also moved to Melbourne, and they're taking off there as well. So this is a 27-storey building, 396 apartments in Melbourne, the 200 profile, which is the one you have in front of you, built with 80 MPa concrete for internal walls. Another example. This builder had a 52-week construction time, reduced by 26 weeks using tinsel, so 50% time saving. That saves on all your costs, amenities, and trades at the time. Now, tinsel has a few websites that everyone has access to, and this has engineering specs, brochures, and all the such available, as well as testimonies and details. And also at Bianco, I'm your main contact for this structural walling system. Oh, that's all. And that's all. Any questions?
With such constrictive spaces, and if you have the reinforcement even more, how do you ensure that the pouring of the concrete is evenly compacted?
So that's why they use that special mix called self-compacting concrete, which is the 180 to 200 staff content area. There have been multiple tests, and that's why it has flown through. That shows that there's no honeycombing and segregation involved. So combined with that concrete mix and proper installation vibration, like vibrating in a layered pour, there's no segregation or honeycomb.
What sort of compressive strength are you aiming at? Or does it in like 25 MPa?
That's dependent on the building. So obviously if you're doing a high story building, the MPa might be higher, and if you're doing a small retaining wall, the MPa might be lower. It's completely dependent on what your engineer specs. Any further questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Luke. Interesting products there. I'd like to solve a few people's problems with other materials supply shortages at the moment. So feel free to get in touch with the boys down there at Bianco. Next we have the industry advocate. It is Denise Loftus. Sorry, I introduced you as Dennis before. I think it was on the screen.
That's no problem at all. I get both, so.
Nice to meet you. I'll hand over the reins.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. I just wanted to hand up who knows about our office. Just heard about our office before? Okay, because I didn't want to go into the detail if you've already heard the speech before. But basically, what the Marshall Liberal government wants to do is make sure that every business that's located in South Australia has an opportunity to supply to the government. So we have a policy, and our role is to create opportunities through working with government agencies on projects to define how they're going to apply what we call an industry participation plan to make sure we maximise opportunities for local business. We build awareness by coming out here and talking to people, and I've actually just driven from Gary today because I was there last night talking to them about the opportunities for the cross-government facilities maintenance arrangements contract. And then we also foster collaboration between sometimes large organisations and small organisations to maximise outcomes such as Aboriginal employment, apprentices and trainees. There's a whole range of things that we work on. Our policy, first and foremost, is about local jobs. So where we can maximise opportunities for local people to gain work, that's what our policy is about. And that is delivered either through subcontractors, directly through head contractors, through a range of other opportunities. We also focus on Aboriginal economic outcomes, which means employment and supply chain, regional development, and being in the regions this week. Design and specifications, so for a product that's just been displayed here, which is very innovative, we would actually look at what other products are here in South Australia, so that have been manufactured here in South Australia, what we can maximise there, or how are we maximising the opportunities for Bianco by having that design, which is then falling through the supply chain, through the jobs that Bianco employ, to maximise those outcomes if there's not a product that is alternate. We look at how we can the innovative products and services, and obviously economic development for strategically important industries such as the building and construction industry. So what we mean by that is, for instance, I was in Port Augusta on Tuesday, and we were talking about the Leigh Creek township transformation. What we've decided to do is make that a strategically important project so we can maximise the economic outcomes for that town, understanding that the mine is no longer there. So long-term employment opportunities for Leigh Creek are not great. So where we can maximise those employment opportunities now and ongoing, and that's through training and development. There's a lot of asbestos in the town, so how are we actually upskilling the township on asbestos awareness? Is there an opportunity for somebody who takes on that role to work under somebody that's based here in town who has the asbestos removal licence to actually maintain and look after the town ongoing? So there's a lot of different things that we work on through that. Why bother? Government spends about $11 billion per year. So that's why bother. If you are looking for opportunities, there's a really large one here. What I did is I just went on a couple of websites to download some of the projects that I haven't got all of them because they're too long a list, but I will show you the website that you can go to actually get an update. So the Department of Infrastructure and Transport put out a monthly spreadsheet on all of the projects that they're working on and what stage of the procurement process they're in. So this is where I got this information from. So it's readily available to everybody. And the best thing about this, it actually tells you who's won the contract at the end. So if you are subcontracting and you want to know who's won what projects, so you can perhaps pick up the phone and just say, hey, I've got a Dinsel product, I want to supply it to you, I think you'd be a really good fit for the project. You just can see who's won and follow that up. So obviously, we've got a vast range of projects in the mix at the moment. Leigh Creek I talked about. The Aboriginal Art and Cultural Centre, that's currently in the ELO phase, so they'll be going out to tender in the next 6 to 8 weeks. From there, they'll nominate a managing contractor. Design's not quite finalised, they're still working on the internal parts of that and how that will flow. So the architect will become novated under the managing contractor. I suggest that they're probably looking to start building next year, early next year sometime. So it's just good to keep your eye on what's going on here. The new Women's and Children's also are at ELI phase. Ross Trevor High School had a chat to their architects yesterday. So we're obviously trying to maximise opportunities for the design and specification through having discussions with the architects, so that when the build comes around, that we're maximising those opportunities here in South Australia. So you can see there's a whole range. Going back, someone mentioned KI, so Flinders Chase, there's still a whhole rebuild to do over there, so there'll be another lot of work coming up there. Now this is the piece I was talking to you about. So this is the website address that has all of this information on there. It's actually, if you can't get the website, you just go on to DIT, look at building projects, and you actually see the list of information that they have there included in this document. So as I mentioned, this tells you who's won what. So it goes from architects to cost managers to engineers through to managing contractors and then the general building contractor. Obviously, you can see Coopers was awarded to Hansel Youngkin. That's probably the biggest one on that page, but there's a whole range of them. As I mentioned, the cross-government facilities maintenance arrangements, that's hands up who's heard of that contract before. No. So basically this is a $200 million per annum spend on government buildings, keeping them maintained and upgraded. So it is a really large contract. It's just been awarded to Ventia. Ventia are actually going out and doing a range of briefings at the moment to the current businesses who have supplied under the old contract, or what's current now, and to those that are interested in delivering. So they're actually in town on Monday and Tuesday. So if you're interested, just Google AGFMA. I think there's a registration and interest page there, which is AGFMA, and you can come along. It's an open forum. From there, we're going, I think, Wallaroo and Piri, but we'll be back at the end of the month in Glenelg and Parry Hills. So if you can't come next week, there's a further opportunity. Renewal South Australia. So obviously we work across many agencies, and this is just a snapshot of what they've got going on. The Entrepreneur and Innovation Centre, so they're just still currently in the phase of securing leasing arrangements, but it won't be long, and the managing contractor will be announced by the developer. The International Centre for Food and Hospitality and Tourism, they're still in the design phase of that, so that's still quite a way off. But then obviously there's all these residential projects that they're currently working on, and you can get more information on their website about it. Housing, I've just picked up their top two. So obviously 1,000 affordable homes, significant project. There's 5 major contractors that are actually delivering those homes under this. I don't know if that's been published yet, who's been awarded that, but there will be significant opportunity through the supply chain with those projects. And their head contractor maintenance services, just like the cross-government facilities maintenance arrangement contract, is $100 million per annum spent on housing maintenance and upgrades. And they're going out to market now, but there's a long lead-in time because obviously they've got a lot of IT issues to sort out through the process of delivering that contract. Pathways to supplying to government. Quite often we get businesses ringing saying, well, can you get me a job? And it's like, well, it doesn't always work that way. It's about whether you're supplying directly or indirectly to a project. So there may be a small build, and it might be a $1.2 million build on Kangaroo Island, and that will be directly through a small building company who is pre-qualified with the Department of Infrastructure and Transport. You may supply directly to that contractor, or you actually might supply directly to the Department of Infrastructure and Transport. Whereas the Aboriginal Arts and Cultural Centre, what we're currently doing is obviously they want to maximise Aboriginal economic participation with that. So we're working with the small Aboriginal businesses to work out how they can supply up through the supply chain to the managing contractor. So there's a couple of different ways that you can actually supply government. We developed a ready to tender website. So what we found when we were going out to regions, we're going out to different organisations, that people couldn't always come to our workshops, they couldn't always access the information, so we decided to put it online. This is a step-by-step guide that basically steps your business through if you're ready to tender. So the questions that we ask is like, are you ready? Have you thought about whether the opportunity is right for you or not? How to plan and manage your response, and then what you do through the review submission stage. One of the things that we always say to businesses is you make sure you get feedback when you've won the contract or you've lost the contract, because it's only going to be in your tender going forward. It isn't a guide to everything because we're not experts, and also we don't want to step in the way of business being able to deliver these services, but it's just a guide for businesses who just want to learn where do they go, what's the next stage. There's a really great website. The Queensland Government has a what they call Fit to Supply quiz. If you Google Fit to Supply Queensland Government, it actually asks your business a whole range of questions in relation to workplace safety, to management systems, finance, insurance, all those sorts of things to understand whether you're actually at that stage of ready to supply to the Queensland Government, but it's basically the same sort of practices for us. This is our Connected New Business program. So obviously Ready to Tender is one. We do supply to Gov workshops. We're actually holding one here at Master Builders on the 26th of August. I think at 3:30. We're bringing along Multiplex and some representatives from the Department for Infrastructure and Transport. We're going to have a panel style discussion about how do you get involved with a likes of a head contractor or directly with the department. So it's a really good opportunity for you to come along and understand, if you're interested, how to supply government. We've got the SA Products and Services Register. We recommend businesses that employ locally and have a base here are registered on that, because what's going to happen in the future is a head contractor will complete what we call an industry participation plan, and they have to nominate whether the business is a South Australian based business. So have they been in operation for 2 years and do they employ locally? Is 50% of their workforce here in South Australia? We have a policy for Aboriginal economic participation, and there's industry briefing. So this week, so the CEO was in Port Augusta for the Lee Creek, I was in Clare for Cross Government, and Barry, and now here. So we do these briefings all the time about these opportunities. So if you're interested, make sure you register with us. Give us your contact details, just go to our website and make sure that you're listed there. Just some business support services. So business.sa.gov.au is run by the Department for Innovation and Skills. They've got a whole range of services that they assist with, but they also can give you the latest information of what's federal funding through apprenticeship trainees. Just go to their website, it's easy to access and understand. Again, there's the Skilling South Australia element to that website, and the Small Business Commissioner is there to support you through issues that you have, unfair contract terms, payment issues, etc. Finally, this is our tender ready checklist. These are the things that if you are interested in working with government, that we suggest that you do those things to get yourself prepared. Because if you see a tender that you're interested in applying for and you haven't sort of got your business ready to go, it's probably a bit late. So it's best to do this up front and then think about where you can actually get in. I hope I made that quick. But has anyone got any questions? Yeah.
I'm registered with the first one of the Labor government, and we really not Australian funds for the manufactured vehicles supply here, and we distribute vehicles Australia, Channel Well, Australia. And we lost some projects, the school projects, because they didn't order a product from America. And the only reason for using it was like 6,000 square metres, and we tried to convert it over, and we had some products due to the warranty. So that it was a public warranty, over 14 warranty. Yeah, you bought a product with schools from America, which was in fact,
So,
and a little cheaper.
yeah, okay, so when there's issues like that, you need to contact our office directly if that's coming in during that procurement process. If you're aware, like if you are aware that they're already doing that, to contact our office so that we can ask the question. If there is a commitment made through an industry participation plan, we can certainly take it to the head contractor and say, well, are you meeting the requirements? Are you meeting the commitments? We do have issues, look, it's not perfect, but it's something that perhaps we can have a conversation after this and just work out the details so that
I
then.
might see you up.
Yeah, but it is definitely, that's one of the things, we are a very small team of people. So if industry don't tell us, sometimes we don't know.
And the builder just said, I just got to give the government my 25 year warranty, I don't get anything else. That's what I wanted, the warranty.
They just wanted the warranty.
And I said, we manufactured here, something wrong, you try and find it out of America, and you do it from the city here. You're going to fly out of America with the warranty.
No. And we went through that with a blind company. So basically the architects were designing in Victorian-made blinds. Exactly the same product, exactly the same elements. They had different names because obviously that's the way the German manufacturer of the shade cloths works. And so they were actually just picking the name, which was manufactured in Victoria. We were able to step in and actually get that sorted out so that now they're actually specifying self-restraining product. We've had the same with lighting, unfortunately, sometimes, and sometimes it does come down to price. So the government won't pay a lot more for a product, but
They did say, Mark did say that they said we would pay a small percentage more.
correct.
It's like 60 cents for every dollar work you get at the government, so.
Yes, and because it's economic benefit. So we've actually got a report from Deloitte on what $1 spent here, what's the economic flow and effects through the project. So we can use that argument with the government agencies. But sometimes, there's some stuff that comes under that. So you definitely need to let us know if you hear of anything that.
But no, we did get, I've not had any since we joined up, there's been no ongoing emails or newsletters or.
From our office?
Anything, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if it's still going, to be honest, so.
Well, please don't. So we're actually blowing up the product and services register as we speak, because it actually isn't working. It's not as user-friendly as we'd hoped it would be. So we're reinvigorating and hoping that that will provide.
And you have to be required or.
No, we're hoping that that will just all transfer over, but it's just simplifying that message.
So just check on the site, now we're on there, but I don't have an email or phone call or anything like that.
So, yeah, okay. What we do, and that is an issue for us, but it's also how we're actually promoting that your business to head contractors, because quite often we have conversations, so through these strategic projects, like I mentioned with Lee Creek, but we have strategic projects from building all the way through to IT, and Ian will talk to them about letting of work packages, and if there is something that they're saying, oh, we can't find it here in South Australia, we say to them, well, actually, let's go to the product and services register, let's look at what's there, and we actually feed that information there to them. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that it's coming through to you, but it's something that we do on a regular basis. We're hoping that government staff wouldn't necessarily contact you directly. That's what we built it for originally, was government staff to go for that spend up to $55,000. We just wanted to make sure that businesses here in the state were visible to government agency staff. We're actually flipping it through just to make sure that we're actually promoting that across managing contractors as well. So it's not perfect, it's work to be done still, but we are there trying to advocate strongly for it. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Denise.